Hello, and welcome to our monthly teleconference series. Today's topic is summer skin issues, brought to you by Northern Westchester Hospital's Center for Healthy Living. My name is Margaret Robato, and I'm a registered nurse and educator for the Community Health Education and Outreach team. I would like to introduce Dr. Ross Levy, MD, FAAD. Dr. Levy is the chair of dermatology at Caremount Medical, the chief of dermatology at Northern Westchester Hospital Center. He is an associate professor of medicine at Albert Einstein College of Medicine and an adjunct clinical professor, Hofstra Northwell School of Medicine. Let's get started with our presentation. We're going to use a question and answer format for this presentation. Welcome, Dr. Levy.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So let's start with some questions. First, I'd like to ask you, how should we approach the summer different than other seasons?
So I think that, as summer approaches, and we're certainly right in the middle of summer right now, we just, let all of our guard down. It's a liberating feeling to be able to go outside, not worry about cold and coats and jackets and pants. And we end up just loving and adoring the outdoors and the sun. We need to protect our skin. The skin, and I think over the last 20, 30, 40 years, the skin has gotten to be much more important. And I think it's kind of climbed up to the top of the totem pole in terms of importance. And, people used to just think that the skin was a little wrapping that held in all of the other organs, but it's way more than that. It's got to do with temperature control. It's an excretory organ, just like the kidney. It protects us. It's a inflammatory organ. It is an immune organ. So all of these functions have to be maintained, and that's why we need to protect our skin.
Yeah, interesting point. So how do we decide what sunscreen to use?
So, I think it's getting easier and easier. We used to give people a choice of chemical versus the non-chemical. What does that mean? The chemical ones are all the ones that have long names that end in a zone, oxybenzone and things like that. Those are things that get absorbed. They're chemical. The non-chemicals, they are chemicals, but they're not absorbed. So we end up calling them non-chemical. They are zinc or titanium. And those in the old days, if you remember when people were growing up, they saw lifeguards wearing with a white nose because they were wearing zinc oxide on their nose. And that was before any of the chemical sunscreens came into being. But now we've improved upon the white zinc so that people can wear zinc oxide or titanium dioxide without having that embarrassing white look to them or white paste on them. These are better because they are a physical block. So they just don't let the sun in. The chemical sun does get in, and it then, helps to kind of allay the effects of the sun, but it's not quite as good. So these days, for lots of reasons, one is I don't think we want to have chemicals absorbed that we don't need to have absorbed. And two, to get a better protection, we're going to, recommend the non-chemical, either zinc or titanium containing sunscreens.
Okay, great. And what clothing should we be wearing?
So, I think, we should wear light colors. They should be loose fitting so that the breeze, can go through our clothing. And, if you can, I would wear some of the clothing that is now coming with an SPF rating. You can buy things that will have an SPF of 50. And why is that important? Because people, I think, get lazy and don't put sunscreen all over. They'll put it on their face, maybe they'll put it on their hands, but they'll forget to put it elsewhere. And so if we're wearing clothing that's going to protect our skin, and that's also the reason why using light clothing, because light will reflect the sun, whereas something darker like a black top or such will absorb the sun, and that goes
Right.
through clothing. Also, not to forget, a wide brimmed hat, and then also the ears. The ears do get forgotten in all of this. People
Hmm.
play golf, they wear a golf hat, and their ears are getting fried during the 5 hours they're on the golf course or
Right.
outdoor by the swimming pool.
Right. Great. And what about hydration in the skin? What can you tell me about that?
So, there are many, many different opinions about hydration. And, we're talking about two different hydrations here, hydrating the skin directly, for what people consider dry skin, as well as hydrating the body. I think, people have basically bought into making sure that they drink 6 to 8 glasses of water a day, although even that is a little bit controversial. Just remember, you're getting liquid when you eat fruit, and if you ate a tomato, you're getting 4 ounces of liquid. So saying that you have to drink exactly 6 to 8 glasses, try to figure it out. I think we're all smart enough to figure that out. But the skin will dry out very quickly in the summer heat. And, we tend to be more oily in the summertime, but
Hmm.
people should not confuse oiliness with hydration. And so the skin needs to be protected. And I think one good way to protect it during the summer is by using sun protection factor uh, in many of the moisture creams. So many facial moisture creams will come with a built-in 30 SPF. So that way we're maintaining the hydration of the skin and protecting it at the same time.
Okay. And after we apply that SPF in the morning with our moisturizer, is it important to continue to reapply that throughout the day?
So,
Like, is
as a rule of thumb, if you're going to be out in the sun, then, we do talk about reapplying about every 2 hours.
Mhm.
I don't know that people's behavior is so good, but,
Okay.
we keep saying it over and over again. And, even if half the people comply, well, that would be great. But it is true that, it gets used up. The SPF
Mhm.
is not forever. So 2 hours is what, we recommend. And if you're going swimming, you probably need to reapply, about every hour. If you go in for a swim and cool off and go in again, you're going to have to reapply when you come out. So during the
Even if
day,
it says waterproof, isn't that correct?
even if it says it's waterproof, it's
Mm.
still, going to wear off and rub off. So, reapply, and that would be your best bet. There are many people who go on vacation, they come back and they're tan and they say, Doc, I wore sunscreen. And, in my mind, I want my eyes to roll a little bit because I'm sure they did. They were very good people putting on sunscreen, but they didn't reapply.
Mhm.
So it's
Okay. So about every 2 hours if we're not in the water, and every hour or so if we're dipping in the water and swimming.
that is that is correct.
Okay, great. All right. Is there a safe time to go in the sun?
I'm going to give two answers. One is yes, and um, okay, I could run for politics for a political say that. Um, the if you're going to go in the sun, then from 7 in the morning till 9 or 10 in the morning is relatively safe, or from about 5 o'clock until 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the evening, especially when the sun sets this late these days at 8:30. Um, that said, the more scientific answer is that there are two types of UV rays. There's UVA and UVB. So when we do the morning and evening thing, we are protecting against UVB by doing that. However, UVA, ultraviolet A, is present in equal amounts from 5 in the morning till 8 or 8:30 when the sun sets. And so we are still getting exposure to another type of damaging ultraviolet. So if you wanted to be a purist, the answer is no. If we wanted to, just make people happy, then the answer is yes.
Okay. So let's talk about hiking and poison ivy. How do we avoid these things and prevent and treat them?
Don't go hiking. You
That's
really
my favorite pastime.
that, look, buddy, I think with COVID, more and more people were getting out there and hiking and getting around, trying to avoid being around other people. So hiking really took off. But I think that we need to be careful. People never recognize poison ivy. Even the people who say they understand and know where poison ivy is, they don't. The old saying of leaves of three, leave be, it does hold, but I think that you need to be, in a botanical person or a horticulturist in order to always know that. If you're going hiking, I think you should probably wear long pants and very carefully take off those pants when you get home, and don't let it touch your skin. Especially if you're going to be hiking amid, brush and things like that. Do not hike in shorts. And I would avoid short sleeves as well. I know that some of the hiking is going to be in warm weather, but I'd rather people were a little bit warm than have to deal with poison ivy that can last anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to as long as 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So, be careful, be forewarned.
Okay. And how about treating it if we do get it?
So, a mild case you could probably treat with a home remedy like calamine lotion or such and dry it out. But sometimes when it's much more severe, we definitely need to go to the topical cortisones. And in the most severe cases, people have to be on a course of prednisone or cortisone by mouth. We certainly would like to avoid doing that. We don't want to put people on cortisone, prednisone if we don't have to. So that is why I warn people about just being protective when they're out in their garden or hiking, anything outdoors, especially with a rainy season. Poison ivy just does well. And, summertime, we tend to get lots of rain showers, thunderstorms. Poison ivy does great.
Okay. It thrives in it. All righty. What about bug bites? Any tips for prevention?
Yeah, stay indoors. We are going out hiking, to be careful. I would again say wear high socks, wear long pants. I would also have people use either DEET as a protection and to spray that around the ankles or around the wrist area, around the neck. And if you want to use something that's a little bit perhaps more user-friendly, things with picaridin, which is a more natural substance, and I think potentially certainly safer than using DEET. Nobody likes using all of these chemicals if they can avoid it. So the word is picaridin, Picaridin.
Okay, thank you. What is heat rash?
Heat rash. Heat rash is many, many things. You can get a heat rash from too much sun. You can get a heat rash from excessive sweating. You can get a heat rash from irritation from your clothing, from a combination of sweating and rubbing of your clothing. Those are all in the definition of a heat rash. And there are people who literally just can get a rash from their skin being too hot. And you can, when that happens, you get water underneath the top layer of the skin, the epidermis. It kind of swells and it gets red, and it looks a bit like a burn, but that is a heat rash. How do we prevent that? One, I've said this a few times, stay indoors. Air conditioning, not getting overheated, making sure that you wear light clothing, making sure that you stop and take a break when you're doing outdoor activities, and avoid direct sunlight. So sunscreen again fits into this as well, because
Mhm.
if your skin is getting heated and burnt, then you're well on your way to that heat rash. So a word to the wise.
And how would we treat that if we had it? Just would that be like cool wet cloths or?
So, yeah, I think sometimes cooling cloths, cool compresses will help. It's another situation where calamine might help. It over the counter 1% hydrocortisone cream might be needed for a few days.
Mhm.
Those simple things will help. Hopefully you can treat it before you have to get to the dermatologist.
Right. Okay. What about eczema? Is it made worse in the summer?
Well, that's another yes and no. For many people, eczema improves in the summer because the humidity seems to be helpful to the skin. However, there's a variant of eczema which does get worse in the summer.
Mhm.
Probably, in my opinion, a little bit due to things like pollen, which do affect people, who have eczema, and that may be attacking the skin. So, in general, eczema does get better in the summer, except for those who it doesn't. Think of eczema a little bit like hay fever and asthma. Both hay fever and asthma do respond negatively to things like pollen and any environmental pollutant. So we need to be aware. And I think those people who have eczema and they know it, they know whether they're the ones who get worse in the winter or the summer.
Mhm. Any tips for those people who are affected negatively with the pollen and eczema?
Yeah, actually, sometimes I think if you're going to be outdoors, taking a Claritin or an Allegra
Mhm.
prior to activity may actually help you, just
Okay.
like asthma or hay fever.
Okay. Tell me about psoriasis. Does that get worse in the summer?
Yeah, this is the dirty little secret. It probably gets better in the summer because people get sunlight, and
Right.
sunlight helps psoriasis. But your local dermatologist is never going to tell you to go out in the sun to help your psoriasis. If you
Mhm.
do, don't let that dermatologist know. Do it on-
All right. Treatments of cuts and scratches. What do you recommend?
We see this all the time. Lots of cuts and scratches because of hiking, people working in their garden, um, or from bites that they've been scratching. Um, I think this is very practical and is often overlooked in the care of the skin during the summer. But don't be afraid of these things. Wash it, keep it clean. Soap and water is really good. Um, and I think again, if you're going to be hiking or gardening, to wear long pants and long sleeves.
Mhm.
Surprised how many plants have these little prickers on them that affect the skin, and they get infected. So I think we need to have our guard, keep our guard up, and protect our skin.
Okay. What should we be looking for in moles?
So moles generally, can be affected by the sun. They can become darker. They can become bigger because we're activating the pigment in the mole from the summer sun. Moles should basically look even in size and shape and color. When they get to be a little big or quite dark, we begin to worry about them. So the summertime is another time when, people, have to remember that if they're a moly type person, that, being careful about the sun is really, really important. And these moles have to be kept out of the sun because the sun will activate them in a negative way. That's what
Okay.
we call skin cancer.
Uh-huh. And so how often should we be getting skin checks for that?
So many people come in like right after the summer and say, "Doc, check me because I was in the sun." It's very nice, and I do appreciate that they understand about the sun and that they're being very honest. But the sun and the mole, probably the effect of it is not going to be seen for months and months and months, and maybe could be a year or even 10 years later,
Mhm.
which just means that being vigilant all the time. I think people who have a mole history probably should be seen from the time they're 20, 25 on, about once a year. Definitely for people 45 and 50 over, that they should be looked at about once a year, whether they're moldy or not.
Okay.
So keep that in mind. And if they're very, very moldy, twice a year.
Okay. And tell me about the sun and skin cancer.
So that brings us to that, which basically about 95% of the skin cancers that we see are caused by the sun.
Wow.
There's 5% that, probably are just a mutation that occurs on its own. But the sun causes mutations in our DNA, which can set off a skin cancer. For the most part, our immune system is really great and will help to, squash that and prevent it. But if it happens 100 times and your immune system fails 1 out of those 100, you've got a
Right.
little part of a skin cancer. So, not to scare people, we all of the above advice that we offered is to prevent that. And
Right.
thank goodness we have an immune system that actually keeps it down to as low a number as it is.
Yeah. Remarkable, though, that the prevalence is still that 95%. So
Yeah,
unfortunately, because that's all preventative if we had only known back to when we were first born, right?
yeah. Well, look, about 1 out of 3 to almost 1 out of 2 people are going to get a skin cancer in their lifetime. Um,
Wow.
I hate, skin cancer is the #1 cancer in the United States and in the world. That includes all types, whether it's basal or squamous or melanoma.
Mhm.
Thank goodness that melanoma is not the top one of those 3. But all in, that's a big enough number that all of us have to be aware. Because if it's not going to be you, it's going to be a friend or a family member.
Absolutely. Well, so much good information, Dr. Levy. This brings us to the end of our session, and I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. And I want to thank everybody for joining us for our teleconference. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And please remember to call in every month on the last Wednesday at 11 a.m. The call-in number remains the same each time. Next month on August 25th at 11 a.m., we will discuss emergency preparedness with Tim Lanigan, our Director of Emergency Management at Northern Westchester Hospital, in preparation for hurricane season. Thank you so much and be well.
Thank you.